I was talking to my coach. I was telling him all the things that I was frustrated about, that I didn't like about my current company. He said, Josh, I heard all the things that you don't want about your company. Tell me what you do want. I wanted a place where I could trust. I went to my other company and I said, hey, here's my vision for my business. Here's how I want to move forward. Can you help me with this? And I got lip service, a little bit of what you want to hear, and make kind of half promises. And it was clear to me that that wasn't going to be a long-term home for me. Welcome to the Josh Speaks podcast. If you're joining us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, I'm glad you're here. If you're watching me on YouTube, I'm also glad you're here. This is my first ever podcast episode, and I'm excited to be doing this here with you. A little bit about myself. I work at a mortgage company that's called Fairway, and I've been in this career pretty much my whole adult life since I turned 18. My dad owned a real estate and mortgage company. And so growing up, I was around real estate and mortgage, and I worked at my dad's company for about 7 years. And then through a series of events that happened after that, which that will be another podcast episode to go into the personal side of that whole transition. But over the course of the next number of years, I ended up bouncing around to a bunch of different mortgage companies, wholesale, correspondent, retail, banking, just all different places in the mortgage industry, if that doesn't make any sense to you. Um, Lots of different things. I even did underwriting for a little while, which is a totally different thing than all those other jobs I had mentioned, which are more sales related. So um, I ended up getting into a point in my career where I was hitting like a plateau. I wasn't getting the results that I really wanted. And I saw people around me that were having the results I wanted, which at that time was more sales. And for our business, that means more income. And so I noticed that a lot of people that were getting the results I wanted had a professional coach. And so I saw a buddy of mine post something on Facebook that he was at this conference. And I was like, I called him up and I'm like, hey, Kevin, um, tell me about this coaching thing that you're doing. What's it about? Is it legit? Would you mind if I join? Because we're in the same market. And he was super cool about it. He's like, yeah, man, like totally come and check it out. It's been really great for me. So I joined that coaching program, and it really introduced me to a whole different group of people, different ways of thinking and approaching my business. I at that point met a bunch of people in that coaching program that were at this company called Fairway, which I work for now. And so, when I came to that coaching group and I started meeting these other people, it gave me kind of an exposure to this company that I had never heard of before in Florida, in Orlando, in Central Florida. Fairway as a company didn't have a whole lot of market share, so I wasn't really familiar with them. And so, at that point, I had been at several different companies in the last few years, and I kind of hit this hard stop with my company where I just didn't see that it was going to move forward. I didn't think I would be able to stay there and be successful the way I wanted to. And I was talking to my coach, and he said to me, he said, I was telling him all the things that I was frustrated about, that I didn't like about my current company, and I was just complaining. And he stopped me and he said, Josh, I heard all the things that you don't like, that you don't want about your company. Tell me what you do want. And I froze. I couldn't tell him what I wanted. I was so focused on what I didn't want, I couldn't see through to what I wanted. And at that time, I was like 36 years old, been in my career for a long time, since I was 18. And it felt very uncomfortable not to be able to really articulate, like, what do I want? And so that sent me down a path, and I got real clear on what it is that I wanted. I wanted a place where I could trust the people that I reported to, that I had to count on, because in our business, we have to count on a lot of people. We have to count on people to underwrite the loans, approve the loans, close the loans, send the closing documents where they need to go on time. There's a lot of things and a lot of people that need to help and to make a smooth process and a smooth customer experience. So I got real dialed in on what it is that I wanted. And I got introduced through that coaching group to someone who was in a recruiting position at Fairway. And at that time, I had already been interviewing other companies because I had clarity at that point. I went to my other company and I said, hey, here's my vision for my business. Here's how I want to move forward. Can you help me with this? And I got what, many of you in the business have gotten probably from your company when you go to them and talk to stuff like that. It's just like lip service. They tell you kind of, you know, a little bit of what you want to hear and make kind of half promises. And it was clear to me that that wasn't going to be a long-term home for me. And so I had already met with a few companies and had an offer back from a place that I was going to go. I was like mentally and emotionally there. My wife, Jess, loved the insurance. Like I was there mentally. And so that's when I met Fairway, which was not one of those companies at the time I who I was talking to, and it's not where I was planning on going. And so I went to talk to them. I had a phone call. They say actually at that time flew me out to Dallas to meet with the corporate team, and I met all the department heads and everybody there. And I remember going through the whole day and just it was amazing. Like I met the head of underwriting, and one of the funny stories from that meeting was she said, "Hey, listen, if we put you with an underwriter, and an underwriter is someone who reviews the loan and makes sure it meets the guidelines for the program that it's submitted to. So they're a critical part of like how the loan moves forward and how the customer experience goes." So she said, "Hey, if you don't like the underwriter that's assigned, let us know and we'll switch it because they might not like you either, and it will be a win for both of you." And it was just like such a funny, like refreshing thing because it was just a very real a very real conversation, and I was genuine. I felt like they meant it, and it was like a good intention of like making sure that everybody was taken care of and in a good space. And at the end of the day, they had IT. And so uh, everything was amazing. Like the whole day, like everything I heard, I was like, if I could take a magic wand and make the perfect mortgage company, they made it like that, and they even had a couple things that I wouldn't have thought of, and so I was, like, really pumped by the end of the day. So by the end of the day, when it got to IT, I asked what I thought at the time was a trick question because I really like working on Mac laptops, and I know that one of the main software programs that the mortgage industry uses doesn't work in, the iOS environment. It just doesn't it's not designed for that, so you have to use a PC. So I said, "Hey, can I use a Mac working here?" And they said, "Yeah." The guy leaned back and folded his arms like, "Yeah, you can use a Mac." And I'm like kinda paused. I'm like, "Well, how would I do that?" Uh, and so they explained Citrix, what I had never heard of. Some IT people, if you're listening, you might know what that is. It's just like a virtual desktop environment. You dial into it and you can get into like a Windows working environment, but you're on the Mac hardware, which is really cool. So I remember coming back from that trip and telling my wife, I said, because this was the crazy thing about how my expectations were based on our industry and based on interviewing at lots of companies and working at lots of different companies. I said, "Jess, if half of what they said is true, this will be the best company that I've ever worked for in my entire life." And over 8 years later, I'm happy to say that it was all true and then some, which is crazy. I mean, I've never worked anywhere even remotely close to that. And so that is one of the best memories I have coming back from that trip thinking that was my expectation. That was a crazy expectation, is to be lied to, right? Like that's just wild, but that's what it is. That was my experience up to that point. And so I said, "Hey, if it's half true, this will be a great thing. It'll be a significant improvement over where I was. It'll be somewhere where I could see myself." And it's just so refreshing to be at a place where you can trust what they say. Seems like such a basic thing to be able to believe what your company tells you. But my experience up to that point just wasn't that. And that's one of the things that I take a lot of pride is a great word to use, but I take a lot of care in making sure that I do what I say I'm going to do and, you know, keep my word. And so if I need to depend on other people and other departments to keep that word, it's so important to be able to trust what is said to me. And so I love that about here. There's so many things that I could tell you, like cool stories about Fairway. That, like one of the things that when you're new to a place, when you start a new company in any industry, there's a period of learning, right? Where you're not sure who to call for this or that or what department handles it. So they have this email called branch support. Um, and it's like where you email if you don't know who to email, which is really cool. Like that was one of the things that I'm like, wow, that's a cool idea. I wouldn't have thought of that. Um, and so that was made it so easy to get started up and get going. And, you know, if I ran into like a roadblock or I wasn't sure what to do, you could just email branch support and they'll solve it for you or get you to who you need to go to. I remember one of the first loans that I worked when I came here, it was a Saturday, and at that time, I was a one-person show. It was just me. You know, I started this branch with just me, and now we have 15 teammates, which is really cool. But that day, it was just me. It was a Saturday. I was trying to send initial loan disclosures to a client, and I got stuck, like, in my computer land stuck. I couldn't send the disclosures and I was starting to panic. And so I emailed branch support and this is a Saturday morning and early, and I got an email response back from a guy named Steve Jacobson. And I'm like, huh, I thought that was the CEO. That's weird. Maybe there's more than one Steve Jacobson who works here. And I clicked the link in Outlook and it was like Steve Jacobson, Chief Executive Officer. And I'm like, okay, like that's wild. And then a couple minutes later, somebody jumped in and helped me solve my problem and the disclosures were out. And I was just blown away because I mean, this guy is on Central Time. And so it was even earlier there, and it was just such a quick response. And I was like, wow, this place, like one of our core values is speed to respond. And here's the CEO of the company on a Saturday morning answering an email from a one-man branch in Orlando that's brand new. To me, that was, other places that I had been, you maybe get that treatment if you're like the top person in the company, right? But here, they say, hey, every loan is important, every client matters, every person matters. And so it was just so refreshing to see that in action. And being here 8+ years, it's not a one-off. Like that's really who we are. And it's set by the tone from the top. And it's been really amazing because, buying a home can be a stressful experience. You're packing up your things, you're maybe moving across town or out of state. You have utilities to turn on. You got your kids, you got to maybe register for school or change their school. There's a lot going on. And so, you want that experience to be smooth and stress free. And just to be able to know that, hey, if I get in a jam and I need some help from my company, they're going to be able to jump in and there's going to be somebody who can help and help quick. And so, and that's A to Z, when we're out there talking to clients about getting them approved for a home, if we have a question about how to calculate their income or anything that's guideline related for underwriting to make sure that we can, when we're saying yes, that it's a yes and that customer, that client can go shopping and confidently make offers on homes. If I have a question, I have an underwriting manager who I can call on the phone and they'll answer my call. I can text them and they'll look at a document for me if I need them to before the home is under contract, before they're in underwriting. So we can do these things ahead of time just to reduce stress. That's something that I personally like to do because we all have enough stress in our life. We don't need any extra stress when we're trying to buy a house. So a lot of the stuff that I like to do, and this is part of the vision that I created back around like 2016 in that coaching conversation. And I realized that a lot of the stress was coming from, things were happening into the loan process that felt like they should have happened before. And the company just wouldn't let me do that. And so that was so refreshing to me to be able to do those things upfront where I wanted to in the process to help serve that client the way that I would want to be served in that way. I wouldn't want to be, you know, showing the house to my family and, talking to friends about it. And then 3 weeks later find out, oh, actually, I can't buy that house. How embarrassing would that be? How frustrating and disappointing would that be personally, to be able to think you're going to buy a house. And then if you find out that you can't. Um, so those are the kind of adjustments that I made to my vision and how Fairway has helped me to make that a reality, and the peace that I have for that part of my life to know that I have help when I need it and that there's a place for me to go, and whatever issue or problem that we run into, that there's somebody that I can call at Fairway that will help me solve it. And I know, based on 8 years of experience and hundreds, probably thousands of loans that we've done through our branch in that time period, that whatever the resolution is, I'll be proud of it. I'll be able to explain it in a way that's easy to understand to everyone involved, the client, the realtor, everybody. And it's just such a refreshing, peaceful thing, which are not things that people typically say when they talk about buying a house or being in the mortgage industry, period. So those are just some of the things that I really love and appreciate about Fairway and why I'm so thankful to be working here. And I'm very thankful that I didn't go to that other company and that I've been here and made this my home away from home for the last 8 years. Can't wait to tell you more about Fairway and my team here in Orlando in the near future. So stay tuned for the next episode.